Hello, Alex here with another guitar lesson from stepbystepmusic.com. Guitar players, have you noticed that patterns can be difficult to learn on the guitar? Well, if you have, I have two pieces of good news for you. One is, it's not your fault. Seriously. Number two is, this is curable. Today's lesson is on carrying patterns over the B string, specifically today, the major scale. One, we're going to review the major scale in its primary location, its regular pattern, if you will. We're also going to look at that scale as it crosses the B string in two other places. So we're going to review the major scale and give you two variations to that same scale. With this process, I hope to start to demystify that B string for you. This will enable you to take future patterns, other scales, not just the major scale, and carry it over the B string with confidence and power. Let's get into it. To start us off, let's quickly discuss why the B string gives us so many problems when we're trying to learn patterns on the guitar. I have here my document, Major Scale Patterns for Guitar. I will also include this as a link in the description, so you can take a look at it on your own. We have what we call fourths. So from E to A, from A to D, from D to G, these are a known distance. We're going to call them a fourth. Today, we don't really care why they're called a fourth, but we got to give them a name, so let's call them a fourth. The point is, the distance is the same between each of those strings. What I mean by that is if you go up 5 frets on the E string, go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you play that note, that's going to be an A. It's the same as the next string. Now, this is true for every single string. This is going to be a D on the A string, same as the next string. This is going to be a G on the D string, same as the next string. But when you follow this string down, you have a B on the 4th fret, same as the next string. So this interval, this distance between those strings is smaller. What this means is our patterns don't work. The patterns that we learn in this area here work really great all over that area. But when you cross the B string, the pattern changes. This gives us problems. Now, before we get into variations of the major scale, let's start by quickly reviewing the major scale. So here I have the major scale represented in 3 different ways. We have the fingering, which is really what we're going to be focusing on today, mostly the fingerings. So I've got the fingerings there. We have a pattern. And I have this also represented in scale degrees, which is, of course, the numbers of the major scale. First note, second note, third note, on all the way up to 8. And we do have notes represented here. This is just an example. So this scale could be the C major scale if it started in that place on the fretboard. But of course, when you learn the pattern of a major scale or any scale, you can take it up and down the fretboard, and it's still a major scale. So here, if I have the C major scale, I have, moving it up, I have the D major scale. So, of course, wherever you start, if you use the pattern, that's the major scale. So, again, we'll just review this real quick. I'll start on C, and focusing on the fingerings only right now, I'm going to use finger 2, finger 4, finger 1, finger 2, 4, next string, finger 1, 3, and 4. Again, that's 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Now, if you are new to the major scale, learn this pattern first. If you see my other videos, you've seen me say that over and over. Learn this pattern really, really well. What I don't want is for you to learn 3 new patterns today. I want you to know the major scale already and then learn 2 variations of it. Now, of course, it's worth mentioning that this is a 3-string pattern, meaning that played the way we're playing it today, it takes 3 strings to complete, right? And so here we're on the A, D, and G. Okay, so keep that in mind. And as we go down the document here, you'll notice that you can start this pattern anywhere on the E string, anywhere on the A string. Like I say, it's a movable pattern, but we can't move it over any more than that. If we start on the D string and we go for 3 strings, we end up on the B. And we've crossed the forbidden zone, meaning that the pattern that we learned will no longer work for us. That was a quick review of the regular major scale pattern. Now let's take a look at a couple of variations. The first variation on the major scale, which I cleverly have named variation number 1, is going to cross the B string, right here at the very end of its pattern. So again, 3-string pattern, and we're going to cross it right at the end there. Now, if we look at the numbers of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all the same as they were before. But what's happened is this pattern has shifted on that last B string. And so here's how we're going to think of this. We're going to think of, if you're playing on the B, you need to go up by 1 extra fret. So wherever that pattern was, it needs to go up a little bit further. Remember, on the guitar fretboard, this way is up because that's where we make our higher notes. So we see this pattern shifting this way compared to where it was before. So we still have those same 1, 3, 4 finger numbers. They're just shifted up the fretboard a little bit. I'm going to play this pattern for you starting on E in this case, just like we see on the screen there. And you'll notice a little trick that I'm going to cover with you in just a second. Did you catch that? I call that a position shift. So I'm going to start that pattern again. Finger numbers 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. Now, remember, I need to move up the B string in order to complete my pattern. So I move up, I change strings, and I play 1, 3, 4. But that's a position change. And if I can sort of weasel my way out of a position change, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So there's a good way to do this. I call this a position shift. And that's where I go fingers again, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. Now I'm going to collapse that position. So I'm only covering 3 frets instead of 4. I'm going to bring my first finger over. And as soon as I hit that, I'm going to expand my position in the other direction. Think of this sort of like an inchworm or maybe an accordion. Then I have finger 3 and finger 4. Let me show you again. I'm anchored here at finger 4. I'm going to move my first finger up, change strings, and then expand in that direction. Here's what it looks like again at speed. Shift, continue, going back down, shift in the opposite direction, and continue. Of the 2 variations, this is the harder of the 2. Because we have that position shift. The next variation we see, we're not going to have that position shift. So play this one variation, get used to it, get used to the position shift. Don't rush through it. Use good technique. Make sure that you're not buzzing notes, buzzing frets, and make sure everything looks good, sounds good, and you're playing everything nice and clean. And just as we saw with the primary pattern working on the E string and the A string, this pattern is going to work only starting on the D string. So if your first note starts on the D string, then you will encompass this area. Again, in this case, we started with an E, and we ended with an E. 3-string pattern, and carrying it across the B string on the last string of that pattern. Okay, this is it. Last major scale pattern for today's lesson. I call this one, you guessed it, variation number 2, named after variation number 1. And in this case, we are crossing the B string a little bit earlier on in the pattern. 3-string pattern, crossing after the first string. What this means is the second 2 strings are like our primary pattern, our standard pattern of the major scale. We have fingers 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, and 4. And if we're looking at the numbers, that starts on scale degree 3. Go on to scale degree 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are all in the same place. That's because the B and the E are a fourth apart. That's that equidistant standard that we see all over the guitar except when you cross the B string. So in this case, we're going to think of this pattern as shifting up the fretboard right away. We get these first 2 notes in, and then immediately we're going to shift the rest of the pattern up the fretboard. Whether we're thinking fingers or scale degrees, we got to push that sucker up the fretboard by 1 fret. Now, if we focus just on finger numbers for a second, we see that we're actually not starting where we normally start. If you look, everything's in a line here. Now, I mentioned we would not have to use a position shift in this pattern, but we have to start off a little bit differently. So starting on finger 1, that finger is going to be assigned to that fret the whole time. And 2, 3, and 4, these are all assigned to a single fret the entire time. But we're going to have to start on finger 1. If you've seen my minor scale video, you'll know that I say that minor scales tend to start on finger 1. Major scales tend to start on finger 2. Well, I say tend to because in this case, we need to adjust a little bit and be flexible enough to start this major scale on finger 1. So if you're starting on the G, crossing the B string right away in this major scale pattern, we will want to start off on finger number 1. I'm going to start off here and play this on the note A, just like it's shown on the screen. So finger 1, remember, not finger 2. If we play finger 2, I'm going to have to do another position shift, and I'd like to avoid that if I can. So finger 1, finger 3. Now the pattern has shifted up sort of automatically because we've shifted our hand up to preempt that shift. So finger 1, 3, then immediately 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. So we can borrow that primary pattern that we already know, starting on scale degree 3, fingers 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. We can borrow that and copy and paste it into this pattern. So again, I'm going to start on finger 1 to finger 3. And then immediately I'm into the pattern that I'm more familiar with. And those are your 3 major scale patterns. Your regular primary pattern plus your 2 variations. Okay, let's wrap this up with a quick review of our 3 patterns. And I'm going to play the same scale. I'm going to play all A major in this case in 3 different places using the 3 different patterns. And they're all going to sound the same, but they're all going to look different. Here's our first pattern. Remember, this works on starting on the E string or the A string. I'm going to come up to my 12th fret here, and I'm going to play this primary pattern, giving you the fingering numbers 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. I'll play it up and down again for you. For our second pattern, which is our first variation on the major scale, taking it across the B string on the 3rd string of the pattern, I'm going to start here, my 7th fret on my D string. That's again an A, same exact scale we played before, but it's going to look a little different. Taking you through the fingering numbers, we have 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, position shift, 1, 3, 4. Again. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, position shift, 1, 3, 4, back down, position shift. And for my final trick, I shall play the 3rd major scale pattern for today. That's our variation number 2. Again, we're going to start on an A, same as before, but taking it across the B string after only 1 string in the pattern, I'm going to start not here, but here, finger 1. Got to get that muscle memory, getting ready to start with finger 1 on the G. Here we go. Let's do that with finger numbers. We have 1, 3, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. That's your lesson for today. 3 patterns, 1 scale, 3 places, all for you. If you have questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section. If you need lessons, please visit me at stepbystepmusic.com, and I will see you in the studio.